Well, hi and hello to all the popcorn talkers, and welcome to another episode of Second Way to Kill a Werewolf. My name is Damien, and with me, as always, is my co-host Matthias Rodriguez. I have no name today. I just totally caught off guard. How about this, Matthias caught off guard Rodriguez?
Well, that's for you, Damien, not for me.
That's fair. All right, yeah, you weren't caught off guard at all.
But it's okay. But to answer your question, I'm doing just fine, Damien. Yeah, just started a new job, but I'm doing just fine. Navigating that new business and all that stuff. But luckily, I have people that I work with that I've known prior, so it's obviously a smooth transition when you know people already. But yeah, that's what's been going on for the most part. But I'm doing well.
New job, new you. All right, man. I like it. I'm glad you're doing all right. I myself am doing okay as well. Excited to get started on this one because for those of you that are joining us for the first time, well, welcome to the Silver Bullet Cinema portion of our little show here, where we like to take a look back at some of the greatest movies of our time, as well as the not so great movies of our time. But hell, we enjoy it anyway. We're going to go through taglines, casting, fun facts, and follow that up with a scene-by-scene breakdown that just might make your next doom scroll for what to watch a little bit easier. Why? Because we're doing a movie review about a little movie called Evil Dead Rise. Have you heard of it, Matthias? I hope you've heard of it, because if you haven't, this is going to be the suckiest show we've ever done.
Yes, I've heard of it, and it's actually one that I've seen quite a bit. Honestly, I think this is one of the most watched Evil Dead films, I think, for me, honestly, or at least of the franchise. I think this was the one I've seen multiple times.
I would agree with that. But to be honest with you, well, okay, if we're talking about the entire franchise that this thing goes back to, 1981, 1982, then 100% sure, yes. But if we're talking about recent iterations of it, I don't know. I think, well, okay, honestly, yes. This one probably has more view times on it than Evil Dead that came out in 2013. But Evil Dead 2013, I mean, I that's one of my go-tos as well. I don't know. These are two great films. And then, of course, now with Evil Dead Burn that just recently came out as well. Spoiler alert. It was a good movie. I think that it's going to be one of those movies where if you put one on, I'm going to have to finish the trilogy. And
Yeah.
also, bonus spoiler alert, there's going to be more than just a trilogy. There's actually going to be a fourth one already, Evil Dead Wrath, that's going to be coming to theaters 2028, I believe. Or is it 2027?
Next year, 2027.
Oh, wow, 2027. Okay, there you go. So, bam, boom, boom, right there. So for horror fans, specifically Evil Dead fans, you're not going to be disappointed, I think. But that said, let's go ahead and jump right into Evil Dead Rise. So this movie came out in 2023 and was directed by none other, got tongue-tied there, than Lee Cronin. And if you are a horror fan, that name probably has some familiarity to it now, because he just recently directed another great horror film called Lee Cronin's The Mummy. And I have to say, I was a fan of that movie. What about you, Matthias? Were you a fan of The Mummy?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I think we had this conversation in the past where it's a really solid film that's more kind of like, hey, it's Evil Dead, but with like a mummy's curse. But as far as like a sort of like standalone, like full on like classic mummy kind of horror film, I don't think it does that too well. But even beyond that, as a horror film, I like it. There's a lot of good, scares there, a lot of, good visuals as well too. I think it does that really, really well. So a lot of like the stuff that we'll go into with Evil Dead Rise here, a lot of that definitely is more refined and a little more like well thought out with The Mummy, at least in my opinion. But no, I like The Mummy.
It was definitely a different take on it versus the classic, we're archaeologists and we uncover this tomb and blah, 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 which, we've seen time and time again. So I appreciated the new take on it. I agree that it wasn't the traditional in the traditional sense, but hell with it. It worked really well for me. And honestly, it is potentially another one of those movies that I can just throw on again. Maybe I'll watch it tonight. I don't know. Who knows? So I think with The Mummy in the books now, it's safe to say that Lee Cronin is on his way to becoming a big name within the horror genre because, like I said, this one was one that I really appreciated, The Mummy, and then especially even more so Evil Dead Rise. And I have a feeling that I'm not alone in that because his name is becoming just synonymous as well as other horror directors recently, with just people wanting to know what are they doing next. I, for one, would like to know, Lee Cronin, if you're listening to this, what are you doing next? Hit me up. But yeah, it's definitely I don't know. I'm a fan of I'm a fan of his, and I'm very interested to see what his next idea is going to be. But speaking of 2023, and before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this movie, like we were planning on doing right now with Evil Dead Rise, uh, 2023 had some other great movies that came out that year, actually. And as you regular listeners are aware, we like to play a little game here called the Other Major Releases game, in which Matthias here will do his best to guess the movie that I am referring to by me just naming the supporting cast of that movie as opposed to the star cast. Sounds potentially difficult if I'm being completely honest, but you know what, we're not afraid of a challenge here at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, and if you think you want to go ahead and play along as well, feel free. We won't hear your answers, but you know, your frustration or your frustration or happiness will be duly noted. But if you think you got it, let's go ahead and get started here. So, other major releases game. I'm going to go ahead and start with this actress, and then Matthias, see if you can name the major film that was also released in 2023 based on these names. Rhea Perlman.
Rhea Perlman. Rhea Perlman. I know the name. She is Danny DeVito's wife, or I think ex-wife now. All right, give me another.
Who do I want to go with? John Cena.
Yeah, I don't know.
Michael Cera.
Sarah John Cena and I'm trying to think of things that John Cena's been in 2023. Yeah, I don't know, Demon. This one's already stumped me. Damn,
And I'm trying to
you gave him the easy ones.
hip hoppopotamus. And you know what it is I'm trying to go with names that are supporting cast, but also, they have to be kind of names that at least we've heard of, like this can't be their first movie that they've ever done. So those are the ones I chose there. Let me go ahead and name another one here before I get to a main star in this one. Kate McKinnon.
I know Kate McKinnon as well too. I just don't know the movie all of them are together in.
If I name the main stars, you're gonna get it. So are you throwing in the towel for this one?
Yeah, this one, yeah, I'm not getting it.
Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and name the main star. Well, I'll name one of them. Ryan Gosling.
Oh, damn. Barbie.
Yep, that would be it. That would be it. And if you were listening to this in your car while driving to work and are frustrated, I don't know what to tell you.
Blame
Man.
me.
Get some
Yeah.
therapy because no, I'm kidding. No, it's okay to be frustrated. Yeah, blame Matthias here, because it's all well and fun when you're just kind of listening to this and there's nothing on the line. I mean, I say that and it's not like, there's a grand prize here on the line or anything, but it's all well and fun until you find yourself in the moment and you have to call on your horrible memory as whatever it may be, because yeah, I set myself up for failure sometimes and I'll be like, yeah, he was starring in that movie in our regular show when I'm talking about things like this, and I just blank out. It happens. And a situation like this where I'm just putting these names, I guess, kind of out of nowhere, well, it can be a little daunting. But in any case, Barbie was the answer that we were looking for. All right, let me go ahead and go to the next one. Alan Ritchson.
Okay, came out 23. It's gonna be kind of a shot in the dark with this one, but I think it might be it. It's a really long name of a movie too. the something of Ungently Warfare?
No.
No, because I know
No,
he's in that movie.
it's a very short name, actually.
Very short name.
That's why I laughed.
But movie, right? Not TV show. Okay,
No, yeah, movie.
Okay. Alan Rich, big dude. I know it's a big dude. Okay. Yeah. Give me another one.
Scott Reeves.
Scott Reeves.
You want another one?
Yeah, give me third time's the charm, right? That's what they say.
You want a fresh one? No. Helen Mirren.
No, because I think that came out a lot sooner. I was gonna say Red 2? Or
No.
no? Okay, well I give up. Or give me the main person.
Okay, you already gave up. It's on record. Fast X was the answer.
Oh, okay.
For. Yep. The next name I was going to say was John Cena. Just throw you off and be like, was this Barbie again or something? Yeah, Fast X was the one we're looking for. All right, we got time for one more. I'm going to go ahead and start with the name Benny Safdie.
Benny Safdie, okay. Benny Safdie. What was he in? Okay. I think he directed this one as well too, or one of his. I think his brother did. Beau is Afraid.
He wishes he directed this one, but no, that one is not correct. Jason Clarke.
Benny Safdie, Jason Clarke. Damn it. Third name, Damien.
Tony Goldwyn.
Benny Safdie. Jason Clarke, Tony Goldwyn.
Josh Hartnett.
I mean, it's not coming to me. I don't know why.
All right, I'll give you one more, and this is I'll count this. If you get this one right, then you're good to go. Florence Pugh.
It's not Midsommar, is it? Did that come out?
Tis not, my lord. It is Oppenheimer, 2023.
That was 2023?
According to my research, yeah, 2023.
God, I feel like Oppenheimer came out like a year ago.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been a minute. I mean, when you think about it, hell, Christopher Nolan just released his most recent one, The Odyssey. He sure as heck didn't do it year to year.
Well, yeah. Well, that's the first time I think Damien has stumped me entirely in this whole section. I think they get like one or two right, like last time.
Yeah, honestly, the ones that you got last time, though, I was really surprised because I was like, what the hell? How did you even get that? But in any case, hope you had fun, folks. We certainly have fun with that game. And if you're a regular listener, then you can look forward to the next time that we play that game. So that's going to bring us to let's talk numbers. And as far as numbers with Evil Dead Rise, well, this movie came out April 21st, 2023, with a runtime of 1 hour, 36 minutes and a modest budget of $15 million. Domestically, it brought in 67.2, but globally, this movie brought in $147.1 million. Now, we're not talking Avengers numbers and $1 billion franchise and all that fun stuff. No. But as we've talked about before on this show, small budget, huge return is a big turn on to movie studios, to be honest. And with a global take of $147.1 million, which actually ended up being about 10 times its budget globally, well, it's safe to say that they were going to invest in this franchise going forward, which is exactly what they did by making another one and then now another one. This movie, though, fun fact, was actually originally planned as an HBO Max streaming release, though. That was before strong test screenings convinced Warner Brothers to make it theatrical. And I'm sure whoever made that decision got promoted or something, because, I mean, like I said, to make 10 times your budget, that's a huge deal. It's Also not surprising though, because as soon as I saw this one in theaters, I was like, and I knew this news going into it, saying that that it had been previously meant for streaming primarily, and I was just like, man, I'm so glad that they thought against that, because that would have been a horrible mistake. I think that that could potentially have just killed any interest in seeing another one, because then I don't know, that kind of puts it right up there with Salem's Lot when they did that one. Now that one, I will say that was a good idea to release that one on streaming. But because that one was released on streaming, and you do that with this, that almost puts it kind of in the same category, at least to your general audiences. Your horror fans or your movie fans would probably take a look at that movie and be like, no, this movie's a great movie. Why wasn't this released in theaters? Versus watching it and being like, yeah, I see why this was released in streaming. But I don't know. What do you think about that perspective, Matthias?
Yeah, I think that this was also at a time where in the previous years or so, a lot of like made by Netflix or whatever, or sort of like the focus was to have the marketplace for new films and all that stuff would be on streaming. And I think 2023 into 2024 kind of became that sort of new idea of like, okay, well, things are slightly starting to get, back to normal, after COVID and stuff like that. People are harkening back into like movie theaters and public spaces again. So why not tap into that? So I feel with them making this choice of like, you know what, yeah, because of the good test screenings that we've had, let's go ahead and shoot for theatrical releases. 100% that is like the best, I think, decision that person has ever made. Whoever, was like, yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they got promoted and they got, a nice little extra paycheck there. But yeah, no, good choice. Because I think I still would have liked it on streaming, but there's something about this one, and we'll jump into it when we talk about sort of like the technical aspects of this film. Seeing it in theaters definitely has an entirely different sort of like vibe and feel to just a regular like home theater experience at home. Unless you like paid a lot of money for like a primo like studio set or whatever, or sound stereo set or whatever. So, but yeah, no, good choice, I feel.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And watching it, I watched this one at the drive-in. There's just something about watching a horror movie at the drive-in that just makes it that makes the experience that much better. We also saw Evil Dead Burn at the drive-in as well, and I plan on checking out Evil Dead Wrath as well. Spoiler alert. So if y'all have never had an opportunity to check out a movie at the drive-in and you have one near you, by all means, give it a shot. But another fun fact about this movie, since we're talking numbers, 6,500. Now, what could I be referring to when I say 6,500? Well, that would be 6,500 liters, or rather 1,720 gallons of fake blood was used in this movie. And about 6,000 liters of that went towards one scene in particular, which I'm sure if you've seen this movie, you can guess it would be the elevator scene. That's a lot of fake blood, to the point where it was, I believe, if I saw in some of my research, that Lee Cronin essentially wanted this blood to be like an extra character in the film. And well, extra character it was, because it was definitely ready for its close up. By the end of this movie, I mean, those who are around, I'll say that without spoiling the end, definitely covered in blood. Hell, even those that weren't around anymore after this movie, but nonetheless. Awards for this, though, well, none to speak of. But it was ranked 49 among the other 2023 releases for their global box office performance, which number 49 may seem like, high up there, but again, we're talking horror. So small budget, not exactly the biggest blockbuster returns, but to even be in the top 50 is a pretty good deal. But to also take that up to another level, this one actually made the top 5 of the horror genre for the movies that were released in that year for 2023. Was it number 1? No. It was actually number 5. I mean, it made the top 5. It just squeaked by with that global take. But Matthias, would you like to go ahead and take a guess what the other 4 horror movies that were released in that year? And if you want to take a shot at the ranking, I normally say in no particular order. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and take a stab at it. You know what? That might be a little difficult, because ranking them might be pretty hard. How about this? Just name the other 4 and I'll rank them for you.
All right. That came out in 2023.
Yeah, that's already a challenge in and on itself. So I was like,
Yeah, I know.
ranking them is asking a lot.
uh, did did Scream 6 come out in 2023?
It did, and it is on this list.
Is it number 2?
Number 4. I'll give that one to you.
Okay, well, 2 is not 4, but thank you either way.
Well, I mean, that just leaves you 3 other ones to rank.
Yeah, I know. I'm being facetious. Let's see.
You'd be a sea fish.
I know Renfield also came out in 2023, but I don't think did it make the list though? I don't think it did.
Renfield did not make this list now. Good movie though.
Yeah, really good one. Came out actually in the same month as Evil Dead Rise here, but let's see what else came out. I feel like something from the Conjuring universe came out in 2023. Am I wrong or right? Am I hot or cold?
Yeah, you're right.
I'm trying to think.
That narrows it down by this much.
Did Megan come out in 2023?
Well, wait, you're still guessing which movie came out of the Conjuring universe. There's a whole bunch.
No, I'm trying to think of whatever at this point. I don't know what. The Nun 2.
Yes, The Nun Part 2. None ya business now. Yeah, The Nun Part 2 actually was the number 2 movie with 269.5 million. So You've got Scream 6, you've got The Nun 2, and you've got 2 more to go. Number 1 may really surprise you. And that kind of gave you some, I mean, assuming you can remember that it came out in that year, but I would not have expected this one to do as much as it did. And I still haven't seen it to this day because I didn't like part 1. Oops, I gave you a clue.
Because you didn't like part 1. Interesting.
Very.
Let's see, part. Yeah, I can't think of anything, honestly. I'm getting stumped.
It's okay. I'm going to go ahead and give you number 3. So you got number 2, which was The Nun. You got number 4, which is Scream 6. So that leaves 1 and 3. I'll give you number 3. Number 3 was Insidious, The Red Door. Number 1, you want me to go ahead and give you that one? Because this is a tough one.
Sure.
Five Nights at Freddy's Part 2, $297.1 million. That's crazy, right?
Oh, yeah. Because everybody was obsessed by that concept, and then I just never could get into it. Because I don't care about animatronics. Actually, I won't say that because there was the other one that came out that had Nick Cage in it. What was it? Willy's
Wonderland, I believe.
Willy's Wonderland, yeah. Which is,
that's a good one.
I think, far superior, but that one kind of got overshadowed, I think, by the whole Five Nights kind of phenomenon. But yeah.
I agree. They did a way better job with Willy's Wonderland to kind of make the idea of animatronics like that frightening compared to the movie that really was supposed to specialize in that. But it is what it is. Not to mention the story just wasn't really that compelling. And part 2, I have no idea what the story was because I didn't watch it. But I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a whirl as well. But all right, that's going to bring us to the cast for this movie. And the cast for this movie is going to circle around pretty much 5 main people. We've got Lily Sullivan, who's playing Bethy Boo, Beth, for the uninitiated. We have Alyssa Sutherland, who's playing Ellie, the older sister. Well, the sister of older sister of Beth. We have Morgan Davies, who's playing Danny. Gabriel Eccles, who played Bridget, or Gabrielle Eccles, who played Bridget, and Nell Fisher, who played Cassie. The only one from this cast that I knew of was Alyssa Sutherland, and I 100% understand why they casted her for this, because I don't know how tall she is, but she definitely seems tall. I should have looked it up. Although maybe she's like, I don't know, like 5'10" or something, or because I mean, average woman height I think is like, I don't know. I took a shot in the dark. I was gonna say like 5'5", 5'4". I don't know. So 5'10", I presume would be considered a taller woman. And I'm 5'10", which is why I use that as a basis of comparison. But yeah, anyways, point is, she has a also intimidating presence to her, I think, which I think could also be attributed to, or maybe why she was cast in the show that I knew her from, called Vikings. Um, if you haven't seen that show, great show, folks, and the part that she plays is very well done. Um, but yeah, so she was the only person that I recognized from this film, and I was happy to see her on there because you always want to see some of your favorite actors or from some of your favorite shows succeed. So I was glad that she did really well with this movie. So cast wise, that's pretty much all there is to it. Director wise, well, like I said, it's Lee Cronin, written and directed by Lee Cronin. So yeah, there's that. That's going to bring us to taglines. Taglines are some of my favorite things because they can either be really good or they can be pretty bad. And in this case, I think that the two taglines that this film has worked out perfectly for it. I'm going to go ahead and say the second one. The second one was "Come to Mommy," and the first one was "Mommy loves you to death." Perfect. Chef's kiss. Mwah. That was very well stated. I mean, honestly, this was pretty much a tagline that probably could have been presumed as the log line, to be honest, because it just described the film in like 5 words. I don't know. What's your opinion on these, Matthias?
And I think with a lot of the ones as well too for taglines here that sort of situate around like motherhood or like the whole like evil mom kind of trope or whatever. It was very present in the promotional material as well too, like in this film. So you kind of understand like going into this like that whole focus of just Alyssa Sunderland's portrayal as as a deadite in this film is kind of what really took center stage. Even even posters too. She was like always like right there, just right in the middle of the damn poster. Where like, yeah, she's gonna be spooky, and so
Mhm.
I think a lot of taglines play well into that. So I think all of the ones they've have, even the ones that are a little bit longer. Like I think the other one I saw was "Witness the Rise of the Mother of All Evil," which
Mm,
little lengthy, a little wordy, but hey, still gets the job done, I feel.
I think so. I think that's a very well said, very well marketed one. And I remember seeing some of the artwork that was for promoting this film and some of the movie posters. It just, I don't know, it just hit. It just hit like everything. The stars aligned, as I like to say, for this film, and I'm glad that it did because it was one of the most successful horror movies that led to that contributed to the rise of horror that we're seeing now, also being motivated by the YouTube sensations right now. So it's awesome to see this genre really. I want to say take off, but I'm gonna say get the spotlight that it deserves. But yeah, that's my take on that. So with the taglines down, that's going to bring us to our log line. And for those of you who maybe don't really know what a log line is, or you hear this term and you're like, "What the heck is that?" Well, it's basically a 1 or 2 sentence type of summary of a story that captures like the main character and the central conflict of this story. So it's designed to pretty much just give you the core idea of what this film is. So with that said, the logline for Evil Dead Rise is a twisted tale of two estranged sisters whose reunion is cut short by the rise of flesh possessing demons, thrusting them into a primal battle for survival as they face the most nightmarish version of family imaginable. What do you think of that one, Matthias?
I wouldn't call this a spoiler or anything, but it kind of almost sets up this whole concept that they're kind of almost fighting evil together, which is kind of not necessarily how this film kind of goes. With that,
Yeah.
yeah, it kind of goes in a different direction. I guess you could say that's the twist of it. Well, and actually, no, because it's even in the trailer, so it's not even a twist. Anywho, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It gets the concept going of what your expectation is, going into Evil Dead, type of film. But yeah, I think that one needs a little could have used a little bit more workshopping, honestly.
Fair enough. I'll do better next time then, I guess, because that was my creation, but okay.
Okay, whoops.
No, it's okay. I'm open to criticism. It's all right. No, I'm kidding, folks. I actually looked that one up. But so now that y'all have a pretty generic, a pretty general sense of what to expect from this film, and by most of you, if you're listening to this, you probably actually saw this movie. And if not, then I don't know, spoiler alert. And I don't know if this review is going to make you want to go out and watch it, or it's going to be like, well, I've already lived it through Damien's amazing depiction of this story, and there's no need to actually go out and see these amazing actors do it because I did such a wonderful job as well as Matthias. So yeah, you're welcome. No. But with that said, uh let's go ahead and jump right into the scene by scene breakdown for Evil Dead Rise. All right, let me go ahead and get my notes here that just randomly deleted for some reason. Bear with me, folks, because I'm kidding. So, scene 1, the opening, so to speak. The movie opens with that classic gliding aerial shot using today's drone technology actually to recreate that iconic rushing evil force that Evil Dead is pretty much known for those of you that are familiar with the franchise. Ironically, we do see that later on as the camera pans out or introduces, you see that it actually was a drone that was being used by one of the characters in the movie. We're introduced to a group of kids known as 20-something-year-olds to me at this point in my life at a lake house, where we learn that one of them, Jessica, is not feeling too well. One of the friends goes to check on her and pretty much pays the price for her concern because, well, the top of her scalp is ripped from her head by a now possessed Jessica. The scene or the whole depiction then there ends with Jessica rising from the lake in one of the movie's most epic shots, leading directly into the title sequence, Evil Dead Rise. It was a pretty cool, awesome intro. It's one of those that is I'm starting to expect like an awesome title sequence for these movies. Like that one, and then there was Evil Dead Wrath, and now I'm sorry, Evil Dead Burn, and then now I'm going to be expecting it from Evil Dead Wrath. And I honestly think that at this point, that is an element of this movie going forward. Like now, if there's not an epic intro title screen type of deal, it's kind of be like, okay, was this really an Evil Dead movie? I don't know. What's your opinion on that, Matthias?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the strongest like title card sequences ever, really, for a horror film, in my opinion. There, and I did think it was really clever with how they sort of emulated Sam Raimi's classical camera technique, the whole sort of like shaky, chasing POV shot that he's well known for in every single Evil Dead. Pretty much every single Evil Dead movie has this sort of technique in it. It's pretty much ingrained from it. But I like that to modernize it, it was just a drone, which was really cool. It did seem like with that, as well as the shot of the cabin and all that stuff, it's like that seemed to me almost like a studio note where it was like, okay, we got to set up that this is an Evil Dead film. How do we do it? It's like, one, we employ that, classic technique, made famous by Sam Raimi. And two, we have to have a cabin. It could be a lake house or, this other type of cabin or a duplex. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that a little bit there. It doesn't take anything away from it, but it just seems kind of like a sense of like the studio was like, all right, we got to have this just so that people kind of know, like, okay, this is this type of movie or whatever. But what goes beyond it there, from that point, yeah, it's fantastic. And yeah, just Jessica rising up from the lake there with Evil Dead Rise, just boop, all of a sudden, yeah, it's good stuff. It sets the tone perfectly, I feel.
Yeah, the music just intensifies that scene as well from what you see there. The other thing that I want to call out for this though is I felt, maybe this was just me, but I felt that it was a pretty big callback to the original Evil Dead with when Jessica was reading the book from her bed. It kind of reminded me to the 1982 original film where there's two characters that are like playing cards and one of them's trying to guess what the other card is, and the other friend's like, "Oh yeah, that's right, you got it, ace of spades," or something like that. But as she's reading or pulling the cards to show to, well, not to show the camera intentionally, but the camera showing what cards they actually are, the, I guess you can say, the Jessica of their group is in a corner somewhere or something, and she starts like saying all the cards exactly as they are, and then her voice starts to change, very similar to what we see in this movie. So I feel like that was kind of a subtle nod to that film. I don't know, am I alone in that, Matthias? What do you think?
No, yeah, and we'll definitely touch on a whole bunch of like little nods that this film has, which with having Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell as executive producers on this project, it's like no it's a no-brainer that there's going to be a lot of references to a lot of little Easter eggs from the previous Evil Dead movies as well too. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of that kind of talks and call outs, honestly, in this episode for that.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. All right, well, that's going to bring us to scene two, where we meet Beth and the family. So, our main protagonist, Beth, is introduced while she's on tour with a band. She's there working as a guitar technician. At that point, or at this point in the movie, she's actually taking a pregnancy test, and judging by her reaction, it's safe to say she's not exactly thrilled with the results. But we're then introduced to Beth's sister, Ellie, who lives in an apartment building called the Monde or Monde, I don't know how they say that, with her three children: Danny, the son; Bridget, the oldest daughter; Cassie, the youngest daughter; and oh God, I was gonna make a Home Alone joke. I was gonna say Kevin, but God, what was his name? His dad's name in that movie. I can't think of it.
Kevin's dad?
Yeah, what was Kevin's dad's name in that movie?
I
I
have
don't know.
no
It's
idea.
just I think it's Lost in New York. He's like recording his voice to be able to reserve an apartment, and he's like, "Howdy do." He's like, "My name is, I don't know, Mr. McAllister." And he goes like, "The father." I don't know why that always stuck with me, because like when he plays it back in slow motion, I don't know. It's just, it's one of those, you had to be there, folks. If you had one of those Talk Boy recorder things, God bless you, because all it was a tape recorder, and Mattel made like millions of dollars off of that, and just marketing it in the movie correctly. But I don't know. I just thought about that right now, because I was like, Danny, the son; Bridget, the oldest daughter; Cassie, the youngest daughter; and Mr. McAllister, the father, who was not actually in this movie, folks. We're just going to go ahead and stick with the main cast that I just got through naming. But in any case, Beth at this point arrives at the apartment, pretty much out of an Uber, I guess, and we meet, yeah, or we're introduced actually to the entire family. She discovers that the building is going to be demolished. Ellie's husband also has just recently left her, and the family has basically less than a month to find a new place to live. The tension, you can kind of tell, starts to build between the sisters, because Beth has that guilt for not being there for Ellie. And it turns out it's even worse, because, she's like, well, if you had told me about it, I would have come, in a heartbeat. And it turns out that Ellie actually did make the effort to make that call, and she called her to let her know what was going on. And that just basically proceeded to make Beth feel even worse as she's listening to the message sitting in the restroom. Um, Fun fact about this, and this is something I found in my research as far as this particular scene. So the apartment building that they're staying at is called the Monde, and apparently that's actually an anagram for demon. So Monde. I don't know. Fun fact, horrifying fact, I don't know. Take that for what it is. But for horror fans, it's a fun fact. What's your opinion, or your observations as far as what's going on in this movie at this particular time, Matthias?
I think one of the stronger points, certainly with like introducing the family, and then having um with just the introduction of the family there, it does feel like a lived in space. I really do like the set design, honestly, with this apartment complex that we're seeing, really, just because it's a character in and of itself, really, in this film. And it is kind of establishing that you're going to be in this space for a good while. So there's a lot of important details to kind of see throughout. So, like, case in point, you see particularly with Cassie that she's cutting the head off of her doll, and then
Yeah,
putting it on on like a broken broom or whatever, and also calling her Stephanie. And then
Stephanie.
she throws the pair of scissors that she used to cut her head off, like under a couch or whatever, or under her bed. And then same thing with Danny, who's, like a DJ, is also kind of messing around with his set or whatever and all that stuff. So what I'm getting at with this is that there's a lot of little things that make each character very unique and established there, that have payoffs later on into the film as they get on. And I think that's what this film does really well, is that there is a point to everything that the characters do in the off time before, the Evil Dead stuff starts to happen. And
Hmm.
it's very important to kind of see what exactly those elements have to play with later on in the film. And same thing with Beth as well too, with just having this sort of weird, well, I wouldn't even say weird, I would say justified conflict with her sister there, in the sense that she very much is away, and for the most part, Ellie has been there to just kind of pick up the pieces and continue, working on her family and kind of establishing herself as like, yeah, she is, the mother figure in this film. And they do talk about also having a strained relationship with their mother as well too, which we don't ever really
Hmm.
get anything really in that, in terms of, well, what exactly made their mother unfit. Was it something that, she was going through psychologically? Was there something, else in the picture that kind of, because they do draw into that whole fact of like, oh well, you look just like mom, or you're acting like mom and stuff like that, and it plays a
Hmm.
major theme in this. I mean, this movie is entirely just about motherhood, but yeah, I mean that's kind of thing. What I like about the initial is that there is a lot of setup there for stuff that really has like payoffs going into the film later. So
Yeah, and as they're introducing these characters too, it's the subtleties of this film that just stick with you. Like for instance, you mentioned Cassie with chopping the head off of her doll, and I can already hear the next line where the mom is like, "Cassie, do you have my scissors?" And don't got 'em, mom. Like I can just I've seen this movie like so many times. It's one of my favorites, but I can play it out even as we're. I mean, obviously we're going scene by scene breakdown here, but I can just play that part out in my head. And then the DJ portion that you're talking about with Danny when he's playing, the name of that song is Dance Yourself Clean by LCD Sound System. I looked it up because it's a good song.
it is,
That
yeah.
said, when you look it up though and you play it on Spotify, if you do, you don't get the version that he was playing. And that's, well, because he's a DJ and he was mixing it. So I don't know if they have that mix available. I couldn't find it. I mean, I also, didn't search beyond page one of Google search, So if it was in page two, whoops, I didn't do it. But yeah, no, I liked that song. So I don't know. Anyways, the other thing that I thought was pretty was funny too in this movie was when Bridget is the guy, I guess the other kid or whatever that lives in the apartment, he has a crush on Bridget. He's there just like, eating these these Cheetos. He's got like Cheeto dust all over his hands, just trying to put the moves on her, I guess, or ask her out. And the way he does it too, and what they reference is, which is hilarious because I guess he's got like his little brother with him too. And he's like, "Hey, Bridge, you want to come over and we're gonna watch all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets?" Which, don't get me wrong, that sounds like an awesome time. This kid's going places, let me tell you. But Nightmare on Elm Street, he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna watch all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies." And then like the younger brother, he's like, "Even the shitty ones." And he's like, "Shut up! There aren't any shitty ones." I love that line because in a sense, there kind of are some bad ones in that franchise. I don't know, like I think it's a fun thing to do to like pick what do you call it? A film fest, I guess, if you want to do one at the house and just like watch them all. I think that's a great time at the movies personally. I think that's a great idea. Time well spent, but if you're going to do that, you also have to understand that you are going to be pushing yourself through some of them. Part 4 and 5 come to mind, to be honest. Part 4, I think, is no, part 3 is Dream Child. Part 4 is I should have just quit while I was ahead. I'm gonna just go ahead and stick with part 4 and 5 because I can't remember. And then of
Dream
course I think
Warriors or
no,
Dream.
Dream. Okay, no, no, no. Yes, thank you. Dream Warriors is part 3. Dream Child, I
It's
think, is
4.
part 4.
Yeah.
And then I think part 5 is no, it's not the final nightmare. And then there's Freddy's Revenge. I don't know. Either way, it's I applaud their efforts. I think everybody at one point or another, if you're a true horror fan, you have to sit through all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets. You have to sit through all of the Halloweens. You have to sit through all of the Child's Plays. You have to sit through all of the Friday the 13th. Uh, I feel like those are like the core four. If I had to say, I mean, now you can also throw Scream in there. So I'm talking
Yeah.
about primarily like the 80s ones, of course. But I don't know. I mean, realistically, now that I think about it, if you're a true horror fan, anything that had anything past part one and it was like recognized Leprechaun, Wishmaster,
Yeah.
whatever, you have to watch Leprechaun in Space. I'm sorry. And even more so, you have to watch Leprechaun in the Hood. Bum. Like,
Yeah.
bam, it's done and done. You have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, are you really a true horror fan? I say that, and you know what, Matthias? Have you seen any of those movies?
Oh yeah, I've seen all of them, even the shitty ones.
There aren't any shitty
Yeah.
ones.
And even I would say Hellraiser kind of suffers from this as well too, because even Hellraiser went through
Oh,
that whole period of like having a whole bunch of different ones, even
yep.
some that didn't even have Doug Bradley as Pinhead anymore, which kind of
Mm-hmm.
really, yeah, I think you could say the shitty ones are the ones without Doug Bradley in them. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Part three is well, not, I'm not going to say especially, and I've sat through all the Hellraisers as well. Part three is the one where they started jumping into the 90s, and the 90s was that kind of humorish type of take on
yeah,
things. So you kind of see that, start to play out for Hellraiser, but it is what it is. You sit through them because at the end of the day, they're fun movies. I say that, and I don't know. But in any case, it's like Hellraiser sounds like a fun, good time at the movies. That's going to bring us to scene 3. And this is basically where the Necronomicon is found. So the scene begins with an earthquake taking place in the parking garage as the kids are just returning from picking up a pizza. The first thing that Cassie sees shaking, by the way, is a wood chipper. Foreshadowing? Guess we'll find out. Anyways, a hole opens up in the parking garage, revealing a tomb-like room. Danny discovers some religious artifacts, including rosaries, crucifixes, and photographs. The room appears to have been designed to contain or guard something, it would seem. And of course, Danny discovers the one thing that all of these artifacts are there to protect, the Necronomicon. He wraps it up, puts it back, and puts it exactly where he found it, and they all live happily ever after. Roll credits. That's it.
yeah.
Did not happen. No, because then we wouldn't have had a film. No, actually, he takes it with him. But yeah. Any thoughts about this scene so far, Matthias?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in LA and, having to deal with earthquakes, my inclination was never to, hey, the giant, rip in the earth that just opened up because of an earthquake? Yeah, let's go in there and let's go spelunking. Yeah,
Smart man.
don't do that. But no, I mean with this in particular, I like there's a little nod to Henrietta, which was uh the deadite that was trapped in the cellar in the original Evil Dead, is the name of the pizza place that they came from. It even has her picture on it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, I mean, going into the vaults as well too, of where the Necronomicon was held as well too. I will say the scene that got me there, and I guess one of the first like jump scares in the film as well too, was the all the like cockroaches or whatever that flew off of the book. When Danny went to go pick it up, I think they were like roaches or something like that. Because then they started flying around in it, and they got me. And I was like, "That's pretty gross." It's like that should give you a first sort of idea of like, hey, if a book is covered in roaches and all that stuff, there that might be a signal to you. You should probably leave this book alone.
Very true. Wise words, my friend. Wise words. Yeah, overall the scene, they did a really good job of setting up the production of that little tomb there. Definitely you get that sense of like that claustrophobic sense, and that doom and gloom is around the corner basically. And also that he probably should not be there. But that's going to bring us to scene 4. The book is opened. Because why? Well, like I said, folks, he didn't wrap it up and put it back. He actually unwrapped it and took it with him back to the apartment. And it is there that Danny tries to open the Necronomicon, but can't because the book is locked with, sharp fang-like teeth. This is clearly the movie's giant red flag telling Danny, don't open this book, Danny, which will come into play later. Naturally, though, in all of his efforts, you would think that you would just stop at a certain point, but he accidentally cuts his finger on one of his teeth, I guess, and bleeds on the book. And wouldn't you know it, well, the book opens wide open because, why wouldn't it? What a shocker. Disturbing in it. There's disturbing images in there that freak out Bridget. So she urges him to put the book away, but Instead, after she leaves, Danny discovers a record that contains an account from clergymen in 1923 discussing the unveiling of the Necronomicon. From this recording, we're introduced to a character by the name of Father Marcus Littleton, who attempted to use the book for the good of mankind. Pretty stupid, if you ask me, but it is what it is. The other clergymen apparently rejected this idea, so he secretly worked with others and recorded himself reading the resurrection passages. The passages summon the Deadites. The recording serves as basically a sense of a historical explanation of the Necronomicon and how the evil was unleashed. The Deadites, of course, like I said, are summoned, and they arrive through a classic aerial shot that we saw, similar to the ones in the beginning of this film. And, well, unfortunately, Ellie, the mother, is the first one to become possessed while she is trapped in the elevator. Any thoughts so far, Matthias?
Yeah. So when I talked about what sort of elements in this film really work in watching it in a theater experience, it was definitely in the scene where Danny puts the record on and you hear the voice of Marcus Littleton explaining, the Book of the Dead and all that stuff, and then the other recording once he actually recites the passages. Watching it at the theater that I was in was next level. In terms of as he started reciting it, man, it felt like you were being surrounded by that demonic voice coming out of the speakers, honestly. It felt like you were right there. And this movie does so much in the experience of sound and how not only you portray it as an audience member, but as the characters around as well, to hear it and feel it and stuff like that. You get that real sense of fear and dread just from them reacting, but you're in that space with them as well too, and you hear all that crazy stuff going around. You're like, God, is this happening to the theater right now?
Yeah.
It's like, is this thing, are things gonna happen? But that's one of the strongest points really with this film, and then this scene in particular kind of really definitely sets an example of that. There's also that cool little reference as well too, as Marcus Littleton is talking about how he seeks, to use the book as for the good of the church and mankind. There's a voice that comes out that says, "Destroy it." It's called the Book of the Dead for a reason. And for
Mm-hmm.
keen listeners and who have watched a lot of the other movies, that is none other than Bruce Campbell that is actually voicing that little line.
Oh, nice. Actually,
Which,
you know what? I didn't know that.
yeah, which then brought people's theories of oh, it's probably Ash, but he's in a different time or whatever, because Army of Darkness kind of establishes that whole aspect of dimensional portals into, different time periods and such. But
Mm.
I think he has since said yeah, don't look too deep into it. It's just a little voice cameo. It's not Ash, from back in 1923 or whatever, whenever these events are happening. It's just that. So I thought that was a little cool thing. It's a cool little nod there. But no, this is a good establishment of okay, things are about to get really, really rough for this family. And yeah, buckle up is what it's telling you.
Buckle up, Buttercup. Yeah, it's I actually I didn't know that. That's pretty cool, and it's a consistent thing, I guess, when you think about it, because he's had an appearance in part one at the end. Evil Dead 2013 came out in the post credit scene, which that didn't really amount to anything, and nor really should it. We've had this discussion before. Love Bruce Campbell, love his work, love everything that he's done for the genre and for everything. But overall, I just feel like the franchise has kind of outgrown that and should be headed in a different direction, which it currently is. But that said, hey, if he could do like a Stan Lee type of thing and then just make an appearance as a character that isn't a core aspect of this story development, by all means 100% do it, because the same thing is present in Evil Dead Burn. So why not? But so with this, where was I going to go with that? Yeah, you were right about the sound is just it was so very well done, and it was a good way to have this recited that didn't necessarily come from somebody who just opens the book and starts reading it, like a dummy. And it's oh, let me read this ancient scripted text that seems to be written in blood all over a human flesh pages or something. So I liked the idea that it was played from a record and that it was almost uncontrollably continued in terms of the recitation of it. And for those listening, I'll go ahead and say the words word for word right now. No, I'm kidding. that's 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 like standing in front of a mirror and saying Candyman. Yep, you ain't gonna catch me. I've said it before on a previous older episode. I'll say Beetlejuice 3 times or 5 times, whatever it is, however long, all day long. You ain't gonna catch me at the in a mirror saying I'm not even gonna say it a second time because I don't even know if there's a mirror in this room right now. So that's nope, 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 nope. Don't need to mess with that. But yeah, so the other thing that's interesting is that it's mentioned that the Necronomicon is one of 3 volumes.
Yeah.
And that this takes place in 1923, which kind of, well, not kind of, but definitely predates 1982 version, which Wrath is going to be coming out and is a full film that takes place in 1963 or something 1971, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another movie. So technically a full-length movie in that, but this is the earliest I think that we're getting in terms of the history of this that's mentioned in this film, with the Father Littleton being a character in the year 1923. So I don't think that they would go back and do like a prequel and have to do with that, but I could see them doing something with like the immediate after effects of 1923 of whatever took place in those recordings. But I don't know. That's just me. But also with this being one of 3 volumes, I don't know if each one has had a different volume. Like, was there one volume in part 1? Is this the second volume? And that Evil Dead Burn have the third volume? Or have they been 3 films with the same volume? I don't know. And it gets found. I guess it would be 3 different volumes because, I mean, they're found in 3 different places though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I thinking too hard about this?
Well, I know, like, even all the way back in Army of Darkness, they established that there's 3 books essentially of the Book of the Dead, because there's that scene when Ash goes to pick up, the Necronomicon, and there's like 3 books in the cemetery, and he's like, 3 books? It's like, they didn't tell me about 3 books. And they're kind of playing into that whole aspect here because the Necronomicon from 2013's Evil Dead doesn't look like anything like Evil Dead Rises version of the Book of the Dead. And even in Burn, I think the Book of the Dead there is also different in how they look stylistically. So there is this whole thing of like, these aren't necessarily the same books that you're dealing with in a natural sense, because even so, I think whenever we talk about also what the purpose of the book is for Evil Dead Rise, for Evil Dead Burn, they all have different things that they essentially can do or they can achieve. So I think that's another aspect, is that what they're playing around with setting up this new franchise or whatever is that there is different elements to it now.
Yeah.
So I like the way that they're handling this because it does kind of expand upon the lore a bit better, which I think for something like Evil Dead, you need something more, to really kind of set it up, in my opinion. So job well done so far.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and that's going to bring us to scene 5, titled Mommy Dearest. Well, the power goes out, and Ellie slowly walks back into the apartment and makes her way to the kitchen to prepare an omelet for her dear family. This is where the kids and Beth begin to realize that something is seriously wrong with their mother. Ellie starts saying some pretty horrifying things to her family. And then in one brief moment of clarity, as she's starting to make her way to her family and is basically a last effort to be able to combat whatever evil presence is within her, she is clearly suffering from pain and looks at her sister Beth and just says, "Don't let it take my babies." She then pukes, passes out, and is pretty much pronounced dead. After Beth has a heart-to-heart with Ellie's body, which was placed on top of a bed, Beth receives a disturbing call on her speakerphone, and it's actually Ellie, who again is believed to be dead at this point, apparently calling from somewhere else, we'll say, telling Beth that she is burning alive. That's pretty chilling. I think that was, it really touches on multiple levels within the context of what is going on with that. Because her sister's dead, her older sister, who you definitely get that sense of, the oldest sibling is the one who officially or unofficially kind of fixes the other's problems, or at least tries to. And you definitely get that sense with this. So right away, Beth is already feeling the sting of now being alone and essentially being responsible for the three kids, where she herself was definitely the type of person that would be like, I need you to help me fix my life. Like, I screwed up again. I need your help. And now she's looking at that person that was that type of a presence in her life, dead on the bed. And then on top of that, to get that phone call and then hear your sister's voice in pain saying, help me, I'm burning, I'm burning up, I'm burning alive. And obviously, you know what they're trying to imply there. And then I feel like it touches on the emotional strings, because like you miss your sister, but then at the same time you feel this powerlessness, because even though it's a games being played with her by the Deadite, um, you get a sense of, there's nothing I can do to fix this. Like, what if this is true? What if this really is her? And she's really trying to reach out to me, and there's nothing I can do to save her, and she's suffering, and I have to live with that. That was my immediate takeaway from that. But I don't know. What about you, Matthias?
Yeah, I mean the greatest strength that the Deadites have really is just they prey on those very particular insecurities or secrets that the person that they're inhabiting has against another person or whatever, to kind of do them harm in a very psychological and intense way. And that's kind of like what's happening here, is that you get to see a lot of those elements come into play of what Beth feels bad about, in terms of how she thinks that she has kind of screwed up her relationship with Ellie by not being present. And now she's seeing that the ultimate price of that is, her death striking her in such a harsh way, but she can't even really sort of come to terms with that, because now she has this whole thing to where she's on the phone and she's, screaming and in pain about, being stuck in a place most likely hell and all that stuff, and she can't do anything about it. Which in some way, like with this movie, it's like it does, you're kind of expecting stuff like that to kind of happen, where it's like stuff outside of the element of reality, but it doesn't make it any less like horrifying or whatever, because imagining that happening in some sort of like, tangible way is in and of itself, it's like terrifying to kind of experience. And it
Hmm.
it gets worse from here, is what this film kind of does overall. It's like, oh, you think that's scary? It's like, well, just wait and see. It's like we got a lot of other stuff in the pipeline. So yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that being said, that's going to bring us to scene 6. Basically, the Deadite takes over. Ellie, at this point, rises from the bed, leading the family to believe that she is still somehow alive. However, she appears to be burning up, so the family puts her in a bathtub full of water to cool her down. This is where things start to take an even darker turn. Ellie delivers, at this point, a chilling line as she's reaching over the tub, and makes it very clear that the person that they knew, their mom, is gone. Because she just says, Mommy's with the maggots now. That's a pretty aggressive line. I mean, it definitely sets a tone. And it's a harsh way of just of saying that, like, it's over for you, or it's over for her. I mean, really, it's over for them, but it's over for her now. So I thought that was a good way of, or a creative way and terrifying way of phrasing that their mom, as they know her, is gone. But I don't know, what's your opinion on that line, Matthias?
Well, I think what even makes that even more so horrifying is that that's mostly being directed to, the youngest member of the family. Cassie is right there watching her mom say that, and, power to God, I've already forgot her name, and I feel bad for that. But power to sorry, I'm trying to pull it up here. But power
Ellie?
to Nell Fisher, honestly, for her performances here,
Mm.
because I feel with child performances or child actors, in horror films,
Hmm.
some of it works and some of it doesn't. And what I mean by that is that some are able to sort of really capitalize on like how it must feel as a child to be experiencing things that are otherworldly and horrific beyond comprehension and stuff like that. And there's that very fine line to where it seems that they're more whiny than they are scared, to kind
That's a
of
good way
put
of
it in
putting
a
it.
way. Whereas, and it's a very fine line to dance around to where it's like you are taken out of the whole experience because of just how they are reacting to the horror in front of them. And I think what Nell Fisher does really well is that there's that good blend of like actual intense sort of like childlike horror that you can associate with, at that point in your time. I think anybody who's been around that age of, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old and all that stuff and having, scary stuff or watching a scary movie and trying to sort of comprehend that in your childlike, mind, or at least like what you have already established in your mind and trying to make sense of that. But I think it's entirely different where in this film she's experiencing that, one to one of just watching her entire family more or less deteriorate, and especially, her mother right there, essentially dead but undead at the same time, and trying to figure out, okay, what is actually left of her in there. And again, Nell Fisher as Cassie does a great, great job and really is able to sort of like dance on that line perfectly there. But yeah, it's a it's a good scene.
Yeah, there's a lot that happens too in this. It's after this that she says that line, mommy's with the maggots now, and pretty much starts to stalk her family, like kind of backing them up as she's walking closer. They're taking steps back as she's starting to make her way out of the bathroom there. So during this scene, like I said, quite a bit happens. Bridget ends up getting attacked by Ellie and marked with a tattoo gun after Ellie, tattooed her face basically to the point where she bled, and then, well, inhabited basically Bridget by way of, I guess, blood transfusion. Um, Other tenants also in the building arrive to check on the family, but Ellie kills them off, and it's a form of survival, I guess, but I don't know. I don't think it was planned that way or intentionally planned that way. But the family kind of uses, or Beth, I think, uses that kind of opportunity, I guess you could say, to make Ellie's problem the tenant's problem by locking her
Yeah.
outside of the apartment. But at that point, she's trying to take care of her of those kids now, that she's going to be in charge of. And with this, you also get some really creative point of view shots through the eye hole of the apartment door, kind of that fisheye lens look. And you just kind of see the horror unfold as Ellie is like finishing off these other tenants, like kind of one by one. You get that one thing where she like leaps on one of the guys and basically just like bites his eyeball out and then spits it into the mouth of another guy. And um it's some pretty brutal stuff there during this film, but it's at the same time, like I said, Beth was just, I mean, she kind of unleashed that on there, but she did what she needed to do to be able to protect herself and those kids. So unfortunate for the other tenants, but fortunate for them because that bought them some time to be able to, I don't know, try to figure something out. But of course, little do they know, Bridget was already marked by the tattoo gun. So there you go. Of course, that's a dramatic irony, I guess, where the viewer knows something's going to happen, but the audience the audience knows that something's about to take place, but the characters themselves don't know yet. So that's going to bring us to scene 7. And when you know it, Bridget turns. Bridget blames Danny for losing their mother, essentially. And Danny finally decides at this point to show Beth that the Necronomicon is that he discovered this book, or the book that he had discovered. And I should backtrack there a little bit. So Bridget eventually turns, but at first she's like blaming Danny basically for this whole thing taking place with their mom. So after explaining everything that had happened, Danny realizes that he may actually, be responsible for unleashing these deadites. And so Bridget now continues to start to show signs of this possession. Ellie is still outside. Their mom is outside of the apartment complex and manipulates Cassie, the youngest daughter, into opening the apartment door, nearly allowing herself back inside by basically saying that, hey, your dad's here too, like he came back, and he wants to say hi, can you open the door for mommy, and all of this stuff, while singing this creepy kind of lullaby-ish type of song as well, and appealing to Cassie's better nature. She wants everything to be okay, like any kid really does at the sign of any sign of trouble, really. Hell, at the sign of anybody, I mean, whether you're adult or a kid, I mean, essentially you just want everything to be okay, especially if you're being faced with some sort of a situation like that. I can't even imagine. But at this point, Bridget has completely turned. We see her hunkering over in a corner, standing like squatted over in a corner, just eating glass in the corner of the kitchen, like I was saying. And at this point, lunges out, but the family is able to subdue her, but not before the movie introduces a cheese grater into the equation. And man, let me tell you, they did such a really good job of just depicting of how horribly bad that must have felt, and just visually what it looked like, the scraping on the leg of Beth, because she's the one who I believe knocks out Bridget with like a pan, hence subduing her, but not before Bridget gets one good shot in and just grabs that cheese grater and just like practically stabs her calf with it and just pulls it down. And you're just like, oh man, I can't even imagine what that felt like. It's like I felt the sting and the burn like through her. So I don't know. What's your opinion, Matthias? Do you think out of everything that happened in this movie that was probably, it was the simplest, but also looked to be the most brutal? I don't know. What do you think?
At this point, there's a lot of like really great technical elements really to this to like this section in particular, because prior to that, whenever you had the scene of Bridget slowly turning into a deadite, she's like haunted by these voices or whatever that are telling her. I forgot what they're telling her specifically, but there's a scene to where like this sort of like black mucus or whatever starts coming out of her her eyes, and I still can't see the seam on when that transitions from like to a practical effect into a CGI effect, because it's such well done to where it falls out of her eyes, and it looks so real and so like tangible, where I'm like, man, it's like I can't tell where the seam is for that. And same thing to when she's hunched over and over the sink and she's eating glass. There's that close up scene of like you can see the glass making its way down her throat and it's piercing through through the skin. I'm like, man, that's such a it's so well done, and I can't even tell with that one if that one's practical or CGI, and if it is CGI, it's really good CGI. And then lastly, yeah, with the cheese grater as well. Well, it's I'll never look at a cheese grater the same really in that context there, because I always had those close calls where I'm like grating cheese or like carrots or whatever, and then like I get like my nail or a little bit of my finger kind of touch a little bit of the of one of the grate holes, and I'm like, ooh, that would have been fun. And seeing how it kind of happened with this film and stuff like that, to the back of Beth's leg, I'm like, it's such a simple little thing and all that stuff, because you would never expect a grater to be kind of like an actual like weapon of harm. But there you go. This series always does something really good with like just the most innocuous items and all that stuff being used to great horrific effect. So yeah, it's one of my favorite, I think, scenes, honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you by chance know what a mandolin is, Matthias?
Yeah, it's to cut like those like usually like smaller vegetables or whatever, like super super thin or whatever.
Yeah,
Which you're supposed to use a guard on those, because apparently it's like super easy to chop a good portion of your finger off. Which have
I
you done
did.
that?
That's exactly what I did. This scene, the scene made me immediately think of that. I had this moment where, yeah, mandolins, folks, it's exactly like Matthias just said. Use the guard. Use the guard. I don't care if you are an experienced chef. use the guard because, man, that mandolin does not play. Let me tell you, because yeah, I took my eye off the ball for 1 minute, and I should have exercised caution and all of that stuff. And I just swiped it, and it's just such a clean swipe. You don't even realize it at first until the after effects. Um, and yeah, it was a pretty. I mean, I'm not gonna say intense, but it was. There was a moment where I was like, do I drive? Is this bad enough for me to drive to the urgent care? Because, like, on the one hand, I grew up with the just throw some dirt on it, you'll be okay, you know. And then on the other hand, I was going through paper towels quite a bit. You know, I'll spare you all the details there. And I was just, yeah, you know what? I think the best thing for me to do, and for me, and for just I don't know, just for me, I guess, is to go to urgent care. And I went, and I had to know. Like, I was like, okay, I don't want to leave. And then, like, the nurses or whoever's the staff is there, and I'm leaving. They're just like, this guy, he drove to urgent care for this. All you needed was a Band-Aid. But I wanted to ask because I didn't want to leave, you know, thinking that. So I asked him, like, hey, just tell me the truth. Was this an urgent care qualified visit? And the guy was just like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I didn't want to freak you out, but he said that when he was looking at when he was like examining the finger and everything like that, and had to inject all that stuff to be able to you know sew it up and everything, he had said, I didn't want to freak you out, but I could literally see a vessel just like
Ugh,
pumping
God.
there. And I was like, vindication. All right, it was worth it. I was like, okay, I was supposed to go to urgent care. Please continue. But yeah, that was my experience with the mandolin. I threw it out the very same day, and I have never purchased another one since. That said, moving right along, folks, scene 8. The Deadites attack. Beth wants to listen to the old records to find out if there is a way to stop, or, well, to stop the Deadites, or basically save the family. Meanwhile, like I said, Ellie is still outside of the apartment and just kind of figuring out, how the hell do I get into this? After hearing a cat moving through the vents, she realizes that she can essentially go the same route to get back inside. And well, stupid cat, I guess, because, you know, if that hadn't been there, rumors, some say she'd still be waiting quietly outside of the apartment, but no. So yeah, so she decides to steal that idea and use the vents to get into the get back inside the apartment. Bridget, who everyone had thought had been subdued at this point, suddenly reappears, and she's like cloaked in this cloth that she was previously wrapped in, and levitates in a very like hauntingly way, and attacks Cassie and Danny. Danny, being the protective brother at this point, stabs Bridget, but Bridget uses the same knife to stab Danny in the arm, and then ultimately in the heart. Back in the other room, Beth discovers the horrifying truth that the only way to permanently destroy the Deadites is complete dismemberment. And the way that line is delivered too, by him, by the voice in the record, is just it has this classic 19, I'm just gonna say 20s, I guess. I don't know, like that classic 1920s voice or something. I don't know how to explain that. If you know, you know, but it's just delivered so well, where it's like I said, complete. He goes like, it's complete and utter dismemberment or something. I don't know. Delivered very, very well. Much better than what I just did. So if you could just block that from your memories, folks, I'd really appreciate it, and you won't hear me try it again. But yeah, unfortunately, it's too late at this point, because Ellie, using the cat's brilliant idea, has made it back into the apartment and sneaks up behind Beth. Matthias, what is your opinion on everything that's transpired so far?
Yeah, so I mean, it's another example of the film, ramping up, on the stakes and the horror and all that stuff there. One thing that I really liked, as far as like an aspect of this, which I don't know if you know, and I don't, we don't really bring it up too much, but we talked about the voice on the recording of Marcus Littleton and all that stuff. Of that actually being Mr. Fonda, which was, I guess, the big guy with the shotgun. that used a shotgun to blast Ellie earlier in the film. Do you remember?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, the guy there, Flesh and Blood is also the voice of Marcus Littleton in the recording. So
Oh,
you
really?
could
I didn't
kind
know
of
that.
hear a little bit of it, when he talks there. But with what you're touching on, I think in terms of his voice, it's like I think it's that sort of like radio broadcaster voice and all that stuff that makes it really more resonant. Which you know, honestly, all of the recordings and hearing them just kind of like just by themselves is just pretty awesome. So I think that's one takeaway from that. And then what's what makes this movie different from like a lot of the other versions really of Evil Dead and all that stuff is I feel like this is like really the Deadites, and I think honestly, Evil Dead Burn kind of surpasses it a little bit. But these are the Deadites really at their most visceral, I feel. Because in terms of like
Mhm.
how they attack and what they do to their victims, in this one I feel it's like a lot of it's so mean spirited. Like with Bridge, it's not like she just stabs, Danny in the arm. It's like she stabs him like right in this like random point of the arm that I could just imagine like if you're trying to move, that's tearing up so many muscles and all that stuff there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, spewing, all that, Deadeye blood on him as well too, which that's insult to injury as well too. But no, I really like all of these aspects kind of coming together and stuff like that because it really is setting up, that whole grand, good versus evil battle that you see later on in the film. But yeah,
No, for sure. I mean, yeah, a lot happens in that scene, and it's I don't know. It goes back to the recording. The recording really just took this movie to the next level for me. And it just sound design as well, just overall. So definitely very well done on their part. So that is going to bring us to scene 9. Scene 9, right? Yeah, scene 9. The elevator. So the scene opens up with Danny, as I mentioned, he had just gotten stabbed in the heart. Um, and he sees his sister who's hiding under the bed, which is, I mean, I guess you could say that's probably like part the place where she probably feels safe or something. And he just looks at her and he just says, like, I'm sorry, basically. Which I thought was a very heartfelt, I mean, no pun intended, a heartfelt moment. I swear that wasn't intentional. But yeah, he's essentially just saying, I'm sorry, Cassie. And Deadite Ellie re-enters the room and makes her way towards Beth and realizes that Beth is pregnant by, I guess, just sniffing her out. Ellie climbs on top of Beth, preparing to finish her off. But Cassie, who had been hiding underneath the couch, saves the day by sliding a pair of those scissors over to Beth. Beth uses the scissors to incapacitate Ellie. And at this point, all of the Deadites who were well, maybe not at this exact moment, but a little later on in the scene, all of the Deadites who were previously human and had been killed begin to rise. Beth and Cassie try to escape through the elevator, and wouldn't you know it, of course, the elevator doesn't work because, as I often say, even in the future, nothing works. Ellie, Bridget, and Danny eventually join forces, to put it mildly, or more accurately, become one giant grotesque demon. Um, and the elevator begins to fill with blood because, like I was mentioning, the elevator didn't work. Instead, what was happening was that Beth and Cassie were pretty much just stuck in the elevator. It wasn't going up and it wasn't going down. It was just there. So at this point, the elevator is filling up with blood. The grotesque demon starts to try to enter the room from above, try to enter the elevator from above, which really makes me wonder how in the world did they end up there already? Because I could see Ellie making her way through the vent and figuring it out, but that's just a giant ball of demon. So I don't know how that happened, but in any case, why ask why? And then just when it looks like they're completely out of luck, the elevator miraculously dings and opens up on another floor, spilling that I'm guessing was the 6,000 liters of prosthetic blood or fake blood or whatever onto the floor for that scene. Thoughts on anything that happened during this, Matthias?
yeah. I mean, the blood elevator scene was really fantastic, honestly. And then, of course, like as it opens up, you get that sort of like view of the lobby as it opens up. Like, huh, it's a very clever way to kind of do like a Shining reference right there. So
Yeah.
top notch there. And one other thing too is that the elevator itself is serves as like an actual feat of engineering because it wasn't like it's all CG that they're being dropped. Well, they're obviously not being dropped from a very high floor into the lobby all the way down at the bottom of the complex, but the elevator is built on a steel frame. So what they basically were doing is that to get that effect of it filling up with blood is that they put it pretty much in this huge like tank that's filled with all that flake blood, and then it gets lowered by a forklift, it starts filling up, and CGI kind of does all the all the post processing and all that stuff off of that, but that's just kind of you see that dedication in this movie too, where a lot of those effects where it probably could have been much simpler to just do like CGI or just kind of make it through those means. They're like, there's something to be said about making practical effects and kind of going the whole 9 yards into sort of having something feel a little bit more realistic or tangible.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of the good points, like really with this film, is that there's those attention to details that they do, and a lot of those effects and a lot of those techniques that they utilize. That's more classical filmmaking to really make this feel really lived in as a film. And I really like also the design that they had for the Marauder, which is what they called like that big sort of like combination of Danny, Ellie, and Bridge, uh, which is a really cool design and sort of like very 1980s, The Thing kind of inspired certainly by its look and its feel.
For sure.
Um, but yeah, this I like all these elements because it's like a lot of cool ideas that they put forth that they kind of hint through the book and all that stuff are like coming to realization like in real time now in the film, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, for sure. For sure. All right. That's going to bring us to scene 10, the final showdown. So at this point, Beth and Cassie make it to a car in the apartment garage and attempt to escape. Unfortunately, they are not successful. This gives us our first full look at the grotesque conjoined deadite creature hunting them through the garage. That said, speaking of the garage door begins to open. I'm sorry, begins closing. And at this point, forcing Beth and Cassie to make a run for it. Both Beth escapes, but Cassie gets caught, and Beth refuses to leave her behind. So she turns around, goes back into the garage, and faces this demon head on to save Cassie. This leads to an epic final death scene involving a chainsaw, a wood chipper, the on switch, and yeah, pretty much I would say the end, because Beth and Cassie emerge victorious from the garage. Beth walks out holding the chainsaw, a nod, of course, to the original Evil Dead. And that's pretty much the end of the movie. But wait, there's a little bit more. So the final scene of this movie, after these heroes make it out alive, the final scene of this movie takes us essentially back to the beginning, to the way that this movie started, but is technically at the end of this film, which is weird. It's a weird thing to think about. It was an interesting take, but yeah, the end of this scene leads into the beginning of this whole movie with the people at the lake, where you see Jessica, who is the person that was possessed at the beginning of Evil Dead Rise at the lake house, uh, is apparently staying at that apartment complex and is seen leaving the garage. And because of the remnants of whatever's left, I guess, of the Evil Dead spirit or deadite, inhabits Jessica and sets up the events that take place at the lake house. But yeah, that's pretty much the movie there. We're gonna go through right now though, and kind of touch a little bit more on scene 10, because there was obviously quite a bit that happened in there, but for the sake of moving the scene along, I kind of just wrapped it up a little bit. So during this struggle, like I said, Cassie gets caught. Beth goes back to save her, and at this point, the conjoined deadite is speaking through the voice of the mom, talking to the little girl, to her daughter, and she just says, like, she grabs the chainsaw and just says, like, all I want is your head, baby girl. And it sounds so haunting. Like, it's such I don't know. There's a word for it, and I can't think of it right now. Not juxtaposition. It's a, I don't know. It's basically like you have that calming presence of like your mom, but saying the most horrible things.
Mhm.
Like an opposite type of thing. And that line delivery is just so evil. And they're dead, and they're rising. No, I'm kidding. But no, it really is. It's so, like, that's the thing about, like you were saying before, with these evil, with the Deadites, they know psychologically what's going to disturb you the most, and
Mhm.
they attack it. Um, so yeah, there was that line delivery that got me. Anything that stood out in this scene, in particular of this scene, for you, Matthias?
Another thing too that's kind of a double whammy with that scene is that, like, yeah, Ellie is trying to cut her daughter's head off as well too, kind of in the similar way that, like, Cassie was cutting off Stephanie's head. Of course, a pair
That's a
a
good
pair of
point.
scissors is very different from a chainsaw, but kind of alluding to that. So again, like, this movie does a lot with like earlier setups in like the first act of the film, to where they kind of come back in different sort of variations into the second and third act and all that stuff, to where I don't think there's ever really a scene to where they establish something to where it doesn't have some sort of payoff or some sort of like reference later on into the film, to where it kind of has that way of like, you have to pay attention to every single element that happens in the first half, because in some way or fashion it's going to be important to the action that happens towards the end of the second act, or the end of the third. So that's what I really like about this film, is that it does that in a really organic way that feels worthy of it. It doesn't feel like cheap, to where like, oh, okay, you have to pay attention to this item because, oh, it's going to be some sort of like, MacGuffin or whatever. It's like, no, it's like they thought this out in a way to where they want to showcase it uh in a scene to where something brutal happens to somebody, or maybe it's like an off the cuff kind of funny thing also that happens as well too. It's like it's kind of those multiple ways and how to set up a scene like that. Um but no, I like everything that kind of happens really with the scene, just because, yeah, it's a brutal scene, but there's a lot of like those callbacks there. And even seeing Beth, with the shotgun saying, come get some, that's a,
Mhm.
straight out of Army of Darkness there. And one thing that somebody brought up to me, which I thought was really interesting, because it kind of culminates into like where I feel the series is heading or whatever, or like how referential the franchise is overall, is that every single one of them, Ellie, Bridget, and Danny, have different eye colors as Deadites that represent different films within the saga. So like Ellie has, for the new, I guess, the new Evil Dead franchise, or like the newer iterations, has like the silver tinted eyes or pupils or whatever. And then
Mhm.
Bridget has kind of like those golden yellowish eyes, just like Mia had in Evil Dead 2013. And then Danny has like those original, like the white ones that are just all milky white, just no pupil, like the
That's a
original
good
Deadites
observation.
from the original trilogy, which I thought was really interesting. It's like, it almost like this movie could almost serve as if like it's almost like the end of the franchise in a way, because there's just so many references to the past uh films of it, to where this kind of almost is like a last hurrah of like, oh, these are all the greatest hits that have come before The Evil Dead.
Hmm.
And I think in a way they didn't really understand probably how popular this movie was going to be, to where I get why a lot of those elements were probably put into place. But, as things tend to kind of happen, it's that the horror crowd comes in for films that, are good and that are, just fun watches. And, the horror crowd came for this one, and, look where we are. I would say even more so than 2013's Evil Dead, this one really sets the stage for kind of revitalizing this franchise, I feel. And Byrne does a really good job also of kind of like still keeping a lot of those elements intact. And I'm super hyped for what Wrath is going to bring up there. But no, I mean, this movie ends in a really solid way.
Yeah, it ends with Beth, with that shotgun coming to save the day. They're on the wood chipper. She's able to get Cassie away, and lures. And it took me by surprise, and it sure as hell took Beth by surprise when she's there, feeling really confident with that gun, feeling powerful holding it, thinking like, yep, this is all I need, and she's like, come get some. And in an unexpected move, he just the conjoined deadite launches the chainsaw at her and just like knocks her on her butt basically,
Yeah.
and really caught me by surprise because I was like, oh wow, I don't know why, I didn't think that that would happen, if I'm being honest. And she does. And then the deadite starts, crawling over the wood chipper, and unbeknownst to it, is kind of crawling towards its own death, because at that point, Beth takes control of the situation, gets a chainsaw, finishes it off, and then hits the on button, or Cassie flips the switch, hits the button on, and pushes that deadite through, um, obliterating it, as exactly like Father Littleton had said, complete and utter dismemberment, which this took that to the nth degree, really. And that was it. That's the end of the story that we had described earlier. Like I said, it leads into the scene with Jessica after, but primarily it leads with Beth and Cassie walking away triumphantly, and really makes you wonder if we're going to see them again. With I won't spoil anything, but as far as, maybe we'll save it for another movie, but talking about Evil Dead Burn, I don't know, makes me wonder if we're going to see those characters again. I 100% would be open to seeing that. I think that the actress that played Beth did an amazing job. I could totally see her as just, a tough protagonist in another film, not just Evil Dead, but just in general. She had a good, strong presence about her. And Cassie, we saw her recently in Stranger Things. So I predict, I won't be surprised if we see her in maybe some other horror films that come up. Maybe Evil Dead, well, maybe not Evil Dead Wrath, but maybe something later on down the line. Or maybe, I don't know, a flash forward scene. Who knows? I mean, we know that Evil Dead Wrath is going to take place in the 1970s, but I mean, for all we know, there could be a time jump, or something. Anything could happen. But yep, that was that movie. That was Evil Dead Rise. That was our little scene by scene breakdown, folks. So I hope you all got a really good illustration or narrative in your heads as far as like how this movie went on. But more importantly, is this something that you'd want to check out for yourself if you've never seen this movie, or are you going to go ahead and go back and maybe revisit it and be like, you know what, it's about time I went back and checked this little movie out. And if you do, you're welcome. You can thank our show for that. But as far as people really enjoying this film or not enjoying this film, everyone's going to have an opinion. And to get a good idea of that, for this segment here, I like to usually get best review, worst review, and just to kind of see how one's perspective can be completely different from another's, and just maybe still not be wrong. I mean, these movies are 100% subjective. So what I think is amazing, somebody else might look at it and be like complete trash. But that said, let's go ahead and look at let's go ahead and look at one of the best reviews here. So 10 out of 10, according to this IMDb user. As a horror movie fan, that's the title of this. Anyways, horrible. All right. I'm giving you a 1 for your 10 out of 10 review. But this is something I haven't seen in years. It's exactly what a diehard horror movie fan needs. The Exorcist, The Exorcism of Emily Rose, just without the priests. Kind of, when you think about it. But this movie deserves all the hype. I didn't experience this type of scary in a very long time. It keeps you on the edge of your seat and makes you want to look away till you just want to get out of the theater and go home. Highly recommend. Just be prepared to take it home with you. Ha ha. If you're just looking for a horror movie to watch and you aren't used to it, be careful, because this movie is just insane in every way possible. 10 stars.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I think so. Pretty solid. Now let's go ahead and move out to a 1 out of 10, titled Complete Trash. I have no idea what I just watched, but I do know that I just wasted an hour and a half of my life on this movie. It didn't really have a story other than like 5 bloodbaths in the course of 10 minutes. It was boring, not scary at all, and I do not think this deserves to in any way be connected to Evil Dead. The real Evil Dead is nasty in a way that this movie could never be. Here, we got to see amateur actors covered in blood from head to toe while everyone screamed. There was nothing even remotely scary in this movie. The script was bad. It was almost embarrassing to listen to some of the lines. The acting was at most mediocre. It is really a shame that it turned out to be rubbish, rubbish, as I unfortunately had high hopes for this movie. I really hope no one sees this and thinks that this is what Evil Dead is. I mean, not bad, and it wasn't a bad review in the sense of like they just don't like it for the sake of not liking it, and are just going to trash it because X, Y, and Z reasons. They had their reasons. It didn't hit them in the same way that it hit me. I feel like I could put this movie on pretty much anytime. I just am looking for a good horror movie to put on. I can't decide on what to watch, to be honest with you, but that's just me. So that said, that's going to bring us to our Rotten Tomatoes score. And Rotten Tomatoes score, critics, surprisingly, for a horror film, they scored this movie with 85%, which I have to say I'm kind of surprised at, because I didn't expect a high critic score when I was looking into these films. So to see 85% for Rotten Tomatoes, pretty good. And actually, it was a critic score that was higher than the audience score, which, again, equally surprised. Audience score had this at a 76%. Speaking of rating, for those of you that are regular listeners to this, know that we here at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf like to go ahead and give our own rating as well. And in the process of that rating, we are basing it on a weighted average of 5 different categories. Number 1, story. Number 2, performances. 3, dialogue. 4, production design. And 5, entertainment value. Each of these carries a different amount of weight, with story maintaining the highest amount at 30%. So to break down these types of categories, just to give you an idea, so story-wise, it's basically judging it in a sense of how compelling, coherent, and well-structured was this movie's plot and narrative. Performances, how effectively the actors portray their characters and bring the story to life. Dialogue, I mean, how natural and engaging and effective was the movie's written conversations. Production design, how well the sets, locations, costumes, props, and visual environments create the movie's world and atmosphere. And entertainment value, it's the simplest one. How enjoyable and how engaging in entertainment this movie was. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump through some of these ratings. So, story, I'll go ahead and lead here. Story-wise, how compelling did I find this story, and how well structured was the movie's plot and narrative? This is one of my favorite horror movies, to be honest, just to put on. Story-wise, I am going to give this a 4 point. I'm going to give it a 4.3. Yeah, I feel good about that. What about you?
All right. For me, I'm just going to give it, it's really middle of the road for me, so I'm going to give it a 3.
3? All right.
Yeah, it's not super heavy or drawn out or really anything. There's no true complexity to it, but it's not a film that needs it, I feel. So it is
True.
good enough in the sense that it gets us from A to B, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good way of putting it. For me, I think it's because I like I think it's the little things in it for me that make the story just compelling. It's the connection of the sisters, the how do you say, the disconnection as well, in the sense of like Beth feeling guilty for not being there for her sister, can no longer be there for her. The connection of the mom as basically the matriarch in the sense of this family, and now she's gone. How does the rest of the family try to navigate without her, in a sense? So I don't know. I guess story wise, yeah, I feel like it worked really well. Definitely one of those movies. It wasn't like the most detail rich type of story,
Mhm.
but it was the simplicities of it for me that made a big impact. But yeah, that's why I was like, I feel good with giving this a 4.3. Okay, performances, how effectively these actors portrayed the characters. I am going to say I'm gonna give it a 4, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 4. What about you?
Yeah, I'm giving it a 4 as well. I think there's not really anybody that's kinda, like, slouching in this film. I think everybody has their well-defined idea of what their character is for the most part, and you do get a sense that this is a loving family that is being strained not just by the tension between the 2 sisters, but then, of course, the added addition of having demons into the mix, so but no, I think everybody plays their part super, super well. I don't think anybody comes off as being, phoning it in or disingenuous. I think everybody does, like, pretty awesome in this film.
Okay, that's fair. Dialogue, how natural and engaging or memorable were the movie's written conversations? I am gonna give this a That's a tough one because it wasn't like the most artistic, obviously, and amazing dialogue.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a 3. I think that's a solid take on that. What about you?
Yeah, for me, it's gonna be a 3 as well too. I think outside of, like, the dead-eyed banter and the recordings and all that stuff, there's not really a lot of well-developed dialogue, or I guess memorable dialogue that's sort of, like, driven for the story. Most of
Mhm.
the dialogue, like, in relation to the horror and all that stuff, I think is very top-notch, but nothing beyond that, I feel.
Yeah, that's fair. Production design. How well the sets and locations and costumes, props, and visual environments create the movie's world and atmosphere. I am gonna give the production design. I'm gonna give it a 3. You know what? Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 3.9. What about you?
For me, I'm gonna give this a 4.5.
4.5. All
Yeah.
right.
I think the reason for that is that it's such a great use of, like, a small apartment set, really,
Mm,
and that paired up with, like, the sound design as well too is, like, really just well done, and I don't know, I think it all just sort of, like, really feels really well intentioned, and if you didn't know, this wasn't filmed, like, in LA or anything like that at all. It was actually filmed in, New Zealand, which a lot of the actors and actresses in this film also are from New Zealand as well. Because sometimes, I don't know if you've heard it when watching the movie, but their accent kinda slips sometimes every so often,
mm, yeah, I can
which
see that.
yeah, that's a little tidbit there for you. But yeah,
That's
for
cool.
4.5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I think that's a solid choice. All right, entertainment value. Oh man, this is where I just want to give it like a perfect 5 because it's like I said, it's one of those movies. But I feel like if you give a movie a perfect score, then there's no. I mean, it's a perfect score.
Mhm.
I am not going to give it a 5. I am going to give it a 4.6.
4.6.
I mean, yeah, you
I'm
could
give it
round
a
up and
4.
call it 5.
Well, I'm gonna give it a 4.92. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. No, I'm 4.99999. No. What
But
about
no,
you?
for me, I think it's a 4.5. Honestly, this movie is an hour and a half in it, and it doesn't really feel like it. Like, in a
Mhm.
sense that it doesn't slog, like, it just goes. And it's so well intentioned, it's so well paced, I feel. It's just something that you could put on and be like, I'm entertained, and not really having to feel bad about, like, oh, well, I have to spend 2 hours on this or 2.5 hours on this. It's like, no, there's something to be said about movies that are able to utilize their time well and not really feel like you sort of like wasted a ticket. This is one of
Mhm.
those films where it's like it's a very tight film and you got your money's worth.
For sure. Absolutely. Well said. You know what? That said, I am gonna change my one score from in story from a 4.3. I'm gonna change it to a 4. I think I got swept away with this being one of my favorite horror movies, but ultimately, like 4.3 is a really high score, and even 4 is being a little generous with the score. But I'm gonna go ahead and stick with it as a 4. I like the story. I like the sisterly connection there. Um, I like the notion of family and I don't know. Overall, I think it was really good. You take the same environment that once looked was the part of was the habitat of a very loving family, I guess you could say,
Mm.
or normal loving family, I guess you could say. And they did a great job of exploring the normal type of frustrations that you get with one another, with especially a single mom at this point with her 3 kids trying to do what she can to take care of them. Uh, and then you get that flipped on its head, and then I'll see the same environment, loving environment for the most part, become a very claustrophobic, fears lurking around every corner type of deal. So story wise, I feel like that, and that is also attributed to the story itself. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and stick with the 4 overall. So with that score, folks, that puts this movie, as far according to us, as a 3.74, which honestly, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
seems about right, to be honest with you. What about you, Matthias? What do you think about that score?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much like just on the money there, I feel.
Yeah, I would agree. Uh, all right, folks. And just like that, our time is up. But as always, we want to thank you all for listening to us, whether it be on your day off or your commute to work. We appreciate you taking the time to hit download or push play on your device. We also want to remind you, if you're not already, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Second Way to Kill a Werewolf, where we encourage you to share your thoughts and opinions on the many, many posts that we put up. Also, if you enjoyed this show, be sure to share it with a friend. It really does help us out more than you could ever know. That said, I'm Damien.
And I'm Matthias.
And we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.